Welcome to the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast, coming to you from the Cargo District Recording Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we discuss the most fascinating topics of life. I'm Tyler Yaw with my co-host, Chris Keller, and each week we interview a special guest to learn how they acquired their wisdom over a glass of whiskey. So, sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy Whiskey and Wisdom.
Welcome back to the Whiskey Wisdom Podcast, everybody. This is your co-host, Tyler Yaw, and today I am with
Chris Kellum.
And our special guest today is...
I'm Samantha Ray Mifsud.
Very nice to have you on. We've met a few times out and about, and mostly from Catherine, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and we've had her on a few times. I think she actually surpassed the #1 guest spot for how many times we've had someone on the podcast. So I'm pretty sure she's been on more than any other person.
4?
She's wonderful.
Yeah, because Palmer was on 3, I believe, right?
Well, you can come visit.
Yeah.
Well, she's so much fun to listen to. Such a great speaker.
She really
Yeah,
is.
she does a great job.
So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. And before we get into it, Chris, what are we sipping on today?
So, I know we mentioned this a while ago, but we are Flaviar. Did we say Flaviar?
Flaviar ambassadors, yeah.
Yes. And because we're going into the month of March, I tried the Irish bundle.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're doing a tasting of the Bushmills 12-year. It's a single malt Irish whiskey. It's really cool because on the card they give you can pop it open. It has this really cool wheel. Shows you all the flavors and smells. But according to Bushmills directly, you're going to have tasting notes of dark chocolate, malted barley, and dried fruit. And there should be a smooth, spicy taste, which is actually kind of cool.
Awesome.
The thing I like about the Flaviar too is it shows you all kinds of pictures and everything that's on
so
there.
Cool.
Show the people.
Love it.
But yeah, it has all of the different
Cool.
flavors and everything right on there. And then also it's one of those things where it shows you how much of something you're going to taste. So it has more sweet notes on here than a red wine taste. And it has the pictures and form of how much you're going to taste comparatively speaking. So it's pretty cool.
Neat. So should we taste it?
We should.
Check it out.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's kind of more of a sweet Irish
It is
whiskey.
sweet. Smooth.
It does taste a little bit more spicy on the back end, though.
Yeah.
Delightful.
Intriguing. Yeah, but check it out. The notes are in the show notes of how to set up with Flaviar and try this out with us.
Cool.
The nice thing about Flaviar, too, is you get little small vials of it, so that way you don't have to commit to a full bottle like we've done a lot of. And
A great way to taste something.
And if you're watching the YouTubes, if you're looking behind me, you can tell a lot of our bottles are still very full because we're only drinking 3 to 6 ounces every episode. So
That's great.
yeah. But enough about the whiskey. Samantha, tell us about yourself.
Well, where do I begin? Essentially, I help people to plan and prepare for the future while fully immersing themselves into the present. And I do this in all of my jobs, and I try to do this in all of my social interactions as well. Primarily, I'm a financial planner, but I also teach cycling at Recess by Bevan Prince.
Yeah.
And I'm a yoga instructor, and I have my own yoga company called Marichi Yoga and Wellness.
Okay.
And I just think that it's really important for all of us to be as strong and able-bodied, able mentally and able spiritually as possible. And the only way that we can do that is by addressing all the different aspects of our beings. So in the yoga system, we think of that as mind, body, spirit. In our humanity, I truly believe that there's so many other elements that come into play in our humanness. Financial wellness is a component of holistic wellness. So holistic wellness is really important to me. And that's what I'd love to dive into today with each of you, if that's okay.
Yeah. No, so that's how I know who you are, because I'm weird and I randomly see people on Instagram. I'm like, oh, hey, they're following the podcast. I should check them out. But you're always posting about Recess and yoga.
Yes.
And I'm just so intrigued. Because one, I knew nothing about Recess. And 2, the only thing I know about yoga is from like 15 years ago, and that there's like 3 positions that I actually know names of.
Okay.
But I don't know anything else outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you got downward dog, corpse pose, and
Sun salutation.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
There you
So,
go.
and that's one element of yoga, like so multifaceted, just like each of us. And that's the physical practice of yoga. We call that yoga asana. So the yoga postures or the poses, but it's so much deeper than that. And it started as a spiritual practice in India at its roots. And so really, truly living our yoga rather than just going to a class and moving through sun salutations or downward dog, child's pose, whatever the case may be, thinking about and discovering what each of those postures can mean or can symbolize on a very basic level, we'll put it that way, can help us delve deeper into our mind and our spirit. And I take that kind of philosophy onto the bike at recess as well. And I truly believe that when we do something in our physical bodies, so like if we're sitting on a bike that goes nowhere, but we turn up the resistance really thick and really heavy, and we push through something that requires our muscles to grow stronger and allows us to feel challenged. When we push through and come out on the other side, there's a sense of freedom. If we feel that in our physical bodies first, that's primal, that's carnal, why wouldn't that translate mentally and spiritually?
Yeah.
You know, so everything we do can be a spiritual practice in a way. And that is what makes us wholly well, in my opinion, when we heal and strengthen each aspect of our being. So with regard to finances, and you know all about this too, Tyler, when we get organized and plan for the future, create a financial plan or a budget, strategic saving strategy, we become stronger in that way. Yeah. Maybe that can translate into other things that we do. Everything is connected. I think that's the bottom line.
I like that you kind of bring that up too. And that was another reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast as well, is bringing that in to like a full holy wellness aspect. So the way that I see like the body as a whole, and you might agree with this to a certain aspect, is people have a certain level of weights on them. And if your heaviest weight is your finances, because it's always in disarray and you can't make the payments, as soon as you can get a financial plan into place where you can cut that weight, now you can move up a little bit higher. And now you have that next weight you're going to work on. So maybe that you're a little bit overweight and you want to get a little bit more fitness, and you do that, and now you feel better about that. You can cut that weight and you move up a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And like that's kind of the way that I always look at it. And the more free that you can be without being pulled down to the bottom of the pool or the ocean per se, is the more free that you can move about the world.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it. And so you and I share that philosophy kind of. And I think everything is a push and a pull.
Yeah.
And if you think about it here on this earth, we're supported by the ground underneath us. It gives us a really firm foundation. But if we lay down on the ground and we don't do anything, we're not moving. We're not free. But simultaneously, as the earth is lifting us up, Earth's gravity is pulling us down. And I feel like if we can really honor that balance and think about it in the way that we're both lifted up and supported and simultaneously pulled down, to remind ourselves that we are meant to be right here and this is exactly where we're supposed to be, then the balance becomes neutral, and we can experience that in a way that allows us freedom. So whether that's financially or physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever the case may be, it's about creating balance. And when I started my first business in 2019, it was called Evolution Healing Arts. And I chose to create that business after having experienced many different jobs in my lifetime. I've worked in so many different arenas, and I have a lot of passions, and I've never wanted to hone in on just one. So I'm like, wait, how can I bring them all together and create some harmony, create some balance? at the time I was working at a dance studio here in Wilmington. I still work there. It's called Evolution Dance Complex. Amazing dance studio. It was opened in 2014 by Brooklyn Williamson. And I found that many of the students there, while they were really strong, amazing dancers, there was something lacking, like nervousness was present. There's some anxiety sometimes, fear of going on stage at times for competitions. I'm like, man, what can we do to help these students overcome the fear or anxiety? And I had begun my yoga practice years prior, but I became a certified yoga teacher in the midst of the time that I had just begun working at Evolution Dance Complex. I opened a sister company to Evolution Dance Complex. It was attached in the same building, and we called it Evolution Healing Arts. And my mission statement at the time, so to speak, was healing and strengthening the mind, body, and spirit through education, wellness, and art. A mouthful, right? But I'm like, no, we have to bring all of these aspects in. And to this day, I still believe that in a way,
Right.
but we can simplify it even more, and we can talk about that in a little while if you'd like. But anyway, all of us have past wounds, right? So finding some healing or mending or remedies to those past experiences that have either left a little bit of trauma in us or left us wounded in some way really will help create that balance again. And then strengthening to empower ourselves to become even fuller and even better versions of ourselves is also important when trying to find that balance. Have you guys ever experienced anything like that? Like, has there been a time for either of you where you're like, man, I tried this, it didn't work out, and I'm never going to try it again? Or you feel like defeated in some way?
Honestly, when it comes to swimming, that's how it is for me. Yeah.
Really?
And really, it was from like a childhood thing.
Wait,
So,
so can you swim?
I mean, I can stay above water. I mean, I'm not competing by any means. I can swim to keep myself alive, but that's about it. Like, I wouldn't say I'm proficient.
I was gonna pick and be like, haha, the black guy.
I know where you were going. You probably can swim better than me, though. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, no.
I got that doggy paddle down pat, though.
I can't doggy paddle. It's just something I failed at. Interesting. I'm trying to think.
Now I'm interviewing you.
I feel like there's things.
How the turntables.
There have been plenty of times where it's like, okay, I'm going to go work out and try this.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, like, I've tried CrossFit a few times.
Okay.
And in my head, I mentally got into my head saying, like, hey, this was great experience, but because I didn't do something the right way, I injured myself. I'm like, well, if I got hurt, can't do this again. Even though, like, the concept is actually really balanced and will work and grow people. Like I said, it just got in my head where it's like, oh, well, I'm horrible. Guess I can't do this. And I feel like I should just try it again. It was really cool. I like working out. I should probably do yoga too. But
maybe you wouldn't get injured as much.
True.
Maybe.
See?
That mobility component is important.
It is.
Yeah.
That's honestly a lot. I also got injured at CrossFit. It was 100% my own doing.
Really?
I was being an idiot, and I didn't do what I was supposed to be doing right. And I was just going for time and not paying attention to the left. 100% my fault.
Oh, man.
And so I started going to Paradigm, which actually just moved, but they were in here with me. And they were fantastic. And they were like, you have zero mobility. Like, what made you think you could do these movements so fast? Like, we need to work on this to begin with. So a lot of what they were teaching were just like the movements of yoga to like help with that. So before you even do any of the workouts that we give you, make sure you go through these movements first, open up the mobility, strengthen the areas that aren't that strong, that need to be stronger.
Right.
which I think is kind of where we were going with the conversation, right?
Exactly. Bringing it all back. That's exactly right. And Colleen and Sean at Paradigm Performance Therapy are amazing. Have they been on the podcast?
They have, yeah.
Awesome. I have to listen to that episode.
Good.
I actually, through my yoga business, which is now, it's since been rebranded as Marici Yoga and Wellness, I host a mid-month meetup every single month, and those are my group offerings. And every month I try to host these meetups at a different location in the community. And last month we met up at the new Paradigm Performance Therapy location.
Nice.
So that was awesome. This month we're meeting at Bougie Nights next to Mana in downtown Wilmington. I think that'll be really neat. A totally different venue than where we would normally meet, but hopefully it'll draw some new faces.
So when are you doing that?
That's March 16th.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
The Saturday before everyone gets drunk.
Exactly.
Get your mind right before you destroy your body.
Right.
We were just talking about that. It was like, oh, St. Patty's Day. And Tyler's like, when is that? And I'm like, the 17th. He's like, are you sure? And had to like double check. I'm like, yeah.
It's always
this
March
year,
17th.
It's painful. Like every good holiday is on the worst day. Like St. Patty's Day on a Sunday, everyone has to go to work. Yep. Cinco de Mayo on a Sunday. Yeah. It's like, I can't really enjoy it. The best ones are Thursdays or Fridays.
Yep. True. I agree.
But unless you want to get married on the 4th. You're a Star Wars nerd.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I know where you're going with that now. May the 4th
be with you.
My neighbors are getting married on May 4th for that reason. I'm like,
for that reason.
I'm nerdy, but not that nerdy. But I applaud them. It's kind of cool.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
It's cool. To each their own.
Yes.
Love it.
So what does the business now, you said was Marici, right?
Yes.
And what does that stand for?
So the word Marici is a Sanskrit word that means dawn, or the moment that light overcomes darkness. A ray of light in the darkness has a few different connotations. My middle name is Ray, Samantha Ray. And when I was born, the story that my father tells, at least, he said, I was born in the state of Florida, the Sunshine State. Yep. Yes. So my dad says that I was their ray of sunshine when I was born. So my middle name is Ray.
I like it.
I like it too. And I always liked that idea. I wanted to carry that with me. When I was a little girl, I'll get back to your question.
No.
We have plenty of time.
When I was a little girl, in 3rd grade, I believe it was, maybe 4th grade, we had to dress up as a famous figure in the world. And most of my classmates were dressing as like Paula Abdul and Janet Jackson. And I dressed as Mother Teresa. Because my mom had taken me to the library and we read lots of different books. And I think she tried to inch me into that direction maybe. Yeah. But I read a book about Mother Teresa, who's now been canonized, and she's Saint Teresa of Calcutta. But at the time, I read this quotation by her, and it stuck with me, and it said, "Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier." And like, wow, I want to be like that. Yeah. I want to spread love and sunshine and light and joy and happiness every time I meet someone. And with my middle name being Ray, I'm like, I want to be a ray of light. And obviously that's very ambitious. And I'm not saying that I do that everywhere I go. It's an ambition. Yeah. It's something that I would love to be able to do. So when I was rebranding my yoga company, I wanted to kind of get back to my life's mission, spreading love, spreading happiness everywhere I go. And so I'm like, what is a word that can reflect that? I'm like, ray of light yoga. It's probably been done, you know, a little cliche. Yeah. And in my reading through different Sanskrit and Hindu teachings, I found this word, Marici. And in Hinduism, from what I've read, it is believed that each of us are comprised of many, and we're getting back to what we touched on at the beginning, multifaceted, many different characteristics. In the teachings of Hinduism, these characteristics or traits are referred to as gods or goddesses, masculine or feminine. So when we hear oftentimes in American culture, when we hear the word God or goddess, we're thinking like, oh, it's a deity, it's something to be worshipped. That's not necessarily what it means. It means that there are these different like beautiful aspects of ourselves that when they come together create the whole human. And one of the goddesses is Marici.
Okay.
And the word itself means ray of light, dawn, the moment that light overcomes darkness, triumph over evil. That's what the goddess Marici stands for. And it's often symbolized as a feminine figure. So if you see little deities in Hindu teachings, that's kind of where they come from. They're shown, presented as these human figures because that's what we know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But really, it's a little deeper than that. And that goddess is in me. It's in you. It's in you. It's in everyone we meet, just as all the other gods and goddesses are within us, not on a deity level. Or you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. It's a characteristic.
Yes.
It's
Right.
a character trait that should be honored and revered. And so that's where the word Marici came from, spreading light, spreading love, triumph over evil, and trying to do that through the teachings of yoga and holistic wellness.
Yeah. So let's stay on the topic of spirituality for a second
Sure.
too. So we've talked about spirituality. We talked about it within yoga.
Yes.
When in your practice, what does spirituality mean to you?
Ooh, that's a great question.
See.
To me, spirituality means connection with the divine. I do believe that there's something bigger
Yeah.
than us, ourselves. God. I
Yeah.
refer to universal love as God. I do believe that God is within us. God is around us. God is above us, below us, supporting us. To me, I was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, and I have that background that really supports me.
Yeah.
And many of the teachings of Christianity resonate with me. I also grew up in a big Muslim community. So a lot of my friends who attended high school with me practiced Islam. And I love that religion. I think it's really beautiful, and there are aspects of that I bring to my own life. I have people in my family who identify as Jewish. Judaism is also reflective of many of the morals and values that I hold near and dear to my heart. And there's obviously aspects of spirituality that come from that too. And then yoga itself is a journey of the self, through the self, to the self. Self with a capital S. So every time I practice yoga, not just yoga asana, so not just the physical practice, I try to keep that in mind and stay true to the Vedas and the background of yoga, the true origins of yoga, to just make my body as strong and as well as it can be, to honor my physical body first, but then allow it to become deeper, allow it to become mental and spiritual, which connects it all. Coming back to spirituality, if we can be connected to God by honoring ourselves, being kind to ourselves, and then being kind to others, then I think that we become divine too. And there is a divine light which within each and every one of us. And when we see that in others, it's reflected back toward us and vice versa. And I think that that's spirituality.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a time in my life when I wanted to become a nun.
Oh, really?
Yes. I went through almost a year of discernment, thinking perhaps that I would completely devote my life to the sisterhood in the Catholic Church. I ultimately discerned that that was not the path for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time that I was trying to discern whether or not to become a nun, I was studying yoga, I was fully immersed in my 200-hour training, and there were so many parallels.
Oh.
And so for me, it was kind of like, okay, I can take all of these teachings and fully devote myself to the sisterhood and to becoming a nun, or I can take these teachings and this beautiful foundation of spirituality and continue honoring myself by performing and exercising and teaching and practicing yoga elsewhere, and hopefully share this with the world in that way. So that was my truth. But yeah, I could go on and on about spirituality.
Well, just to kind of take that a little bit as well on the next side of it. So we've talked about like the physical version of yoga. So when you talk about bringing it to the rest of your life, what does that look like to someone who may not understand that, or like the person like me and Chris that we think yoga asana, and we're going to go and we're going to do some downward dog poses. So how do we take yoga and implement it throughout the rest of our lives?
Great question. So if yoga is a journey of the self, through the self, to the self, take a moment to ponder what that means to you. And then when you are producing your podcast, what is your truth? How are you going to do that in a way that's honoring yourself with the capital S, your divine being? And how are you going to amass it or release it or share it with others so that's divine as well? That's yoga.
Oh, interesting.
Mind, body, spirit connection. And then connect, like we're all connected. Right? In one way or another, whether it's on a physical level, and in Wilmington, we're about 1 degree of separation from everyone, right? Or on the intellectual level, like I might be thinking something that you're thinking. We might have read the same book, you know, like we're connected in all these different ways. And then on a spiritual level, it's even bigger. If we were created, or this creation that Earth is, embodies all of us, we're connected there. So how can you honor that connection? That's yoga too. Yeah.
So I have a Chris question.
Sure.
So do you picture like self in like a circle format, or like how do you visualize that? Because I'm a visualization person. Like if you're like, hey, if we're connected through yourself back to yourself, are you thinking like in a circle, like circle of life, or is it like hills up and down, like, or just the big S?
I think that it, on a visual perspective, it can be whatever you want it to be. To me, it's so abstract that I kind of visualize it just as a big body of white light. Like shimmering, sparkling, like white light. It just exists, and we're all a part of it, swirling around. And there's ultimately like no physical body. Even if we get deep enough, eventually, I believe that we'll realize that through eternity. Our physical bodies don't last forever. I think that there has to be something more.
Yeah.
I just really do. Yeah.
I was just curious. I feel like when doing meditation and like practicing things that some people like visualization helps. And so, I mean, if you're doing yoga or you're doing things, just trying to like focus, I'm just curious, like how people visualize.
I don't think there's any wrong way to visualize that.
Yeah.
Just for me, it's almost, I don't want to say nothingness because it's something.
Yeah.
It's definitely a feeling of something, but it's like it's an abstract. It's not like, hey, here's a physical body. It's like, like to me, my thought when you said that was like you said, a bright light. But in my head, I'm thinking like being up in the clouds, like when you're flying, like there's really nothing there. Like in an airplane, it's just air and clouds, but like you still see the brightness of the sun bouncing off the clouds, and you're still floating or flying, I guess, through the air. But that's kind of, I'm that weird person of like 1 through 5. Like, how do you mentally think of things? And I'm like, yeah, I can picture everything in full detail.
Wow, that's cool.
Which is painful some days.
I want to take one of what Chris's typical last question is and kind of turn it around a little bit. So I got my minors in psychology. So I have like the very basics of the knowing of what the psychological type of schooling that you would get in college. Cool. But with that, I always think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and like that pyramid type of thing. So what does self-actualization look like to you for that top part of the pyramid?
Ooh, great question again. Can you explain the pyramid to me? Just
so the bottom of it is like your absolute basic needs. Like you need food to like survive. Obviously, you need water to survive. So like bare bottom basics. Okay. Next is going to be like more of like the shelter, like make life a little bit easier. And as you go up, it's like more going from needs to wants to like the self-actualization being the best part of you. So we've had TJ done on before, and he always talks about being the best version of himself, and he has a checklist. So if he was able to basically hit that checklist every single day and move closer to every single goal without fail, I think that's what his version of like self-actualization would be.
Okay.
So not putting words in his mouth, but when he has that type of thing, like that's what I think of.
Love that. Okay. The very, very best, like, yes. How do I put this into words? Okay, here it is. Yeah. No anger. Mm-hmm. No sadness. No anxiety. No worry. Pure love. Mm-hmm. So if there were a perfect day and you're fully immersed in the present moment, which is, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, what I hope to help people do, live in the present. There should be no thought of the future because it's not here yet. We're not promised tomorrow. Mm-hmm. No worries about the past. It's gone. It's already happened. Fully like enjoying and savoring the sip of whatever you're tasting. Feeling pure bliss when you look into another human being's eyes. Like it almost makes me want to cry. Like, because you're so beautiful. Like we all are. And just really acknowledging that. So at the top, having no reason to be angry, having no reason to be sad or anxious about anything, because we're realizing the beauty of right now. And that's all that exists, and that's all that we have for sure right now.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love that. Yeah. So actually, I'm glad you bring that up too, because that was another question I wanted to ask based off of that. So with that being like the top of it, we understand that there's an importance to planning for the future. So where's the balance of living exactly in the moment and present, but still planning for the future and not tripping on what's behind us? Oh my gosh, I love these questions. This is so good. I've thought about this a lot. Yeah. Because when we're in the present, in our humanness, and all that is like enlightenment, basically what I just described. Yeah. Dialing it back a little bit, we're all human. Yes. We're all going to experience anxiousness. We're all going to experience anger. We're all going to experience sadness. There's nothing wrong with that. Acknowledging that is also beautiful and truthful. And being honest with ourselves is incredibly important. We can get into that later too if you want to. But within that tippity top of the pyramid, if you're living in joy and bliss and love, I believe that a part of that joy, a part of that bliss, a part of that love, while we're here on this earth, at least in the physical, there's an element of hope. And if we carry hope with us, that is simply the pure acknowledgement that the future could exist. And if we do get to live until tomorrow, what do we want that to feel like? What do we want that to look like? If we do get to live until we're 80 years old, what do we want to be doing then? How do we want to immerse ourselves in the present as an 80-year-old and find this blissful love? So holding on to the element of hope is where I think that planning and preparation comes in. Yeah.
Okay.
as human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were just spirits floating around everywhere, which I think we will be eventually,
Yeah.
there would be no need for planning.
Mm-hmm.
But because we do live on this earth, we should probably plan for the future,
Right.
just in case it happens, and hopefully it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I know we're for two guys who do very opposite of what you do on a daily basis. I think it's always interesting the questions that we come up with.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Because a lot of times I'm surrounded by yogis too.
Right.
And we're always having like these spiritual conversations. So it's cool to talk to you guys about this.
And it's always neat on the opposite like spectrum of that too, because I'm sure that it would be really neat for just us to like have coffee sometime and talk about the way that we see finance together.
I would love that.
Because that would be extremely fascinating. Like
Yeah.
that could be a whole other podcast topic on its own.
Sure.
But like just having that, because I'm definitely like the numbers guy, the analytics side of
not.
it. See, exactly. And honestly, that's what I love about like the financial world as well too. Is there's so many different ways to look at it
Yep.
and still plan successfully for the future. And that's why there needs to be so many different financial advisors too, right?
I completely
Because
agree.
just like having the right doctor that matches with you more ideally than another person or an attorney or really any professional out
Yeah,
there. I'm sure
absolutely.
even different yogis out there.
Yes.
I'm sure there's been others that you've connected with more than others.
Absolutely. I have my 2 favorite yoga teachers in town.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we all resonate with
Yeah.
different people for different reasons, for sure.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
I think that's just
Love
life in general. Like if you think about it, everyone, my wife hates it sometimes when I do this because I look at her and like I grew up in church and I'm like totally, that's what I did for years and years. And I hit a certain point in life where I'm like, I understand that everyone puts off when everyone's like, oh, hey, your vibe is off. And then they're like, what are you talking about?
What
I'm
does
like,
that mean?
Right.
I can. My wife hates the fact that like she doesn't hate anything, but she always thinks it's weird because I'm like I can hear or like I pick up on frequencies off of different people. So like you resonate, and people are like, what do you mean? I'm like everyone's on a different frequency. Like you're gonna resonate with certain people better because either your life path has been different or like something about each other. Like you hit a tuning fork and you guys like are on the same frequency.
Right.
And other people you're like, yes, we're both yoga people, or yes, we both go to the gym and we do this, but there's something about you that like we have the same goals, but like I don't think we should be
Right.
taking 2 separate paths to get to that goal.
Yep.
And it's always interesting because I'll look at her and I'm like, something's wrong. Like, what are you talking
She
about?
knows. You know.
And she's like, what do you mean? What are you asking? I'm like, I know something's wrong. Like it's weird. Like these stupid, like we have tons of ring lights now. But
That was a jab at me. It was-
They help make you look pretty.
we want to make everyone look as beautiful as possible. But the weird thing is I can hear,
I know.
Oh, I can hear that too.
making some people are like, what are you talking about?
no,
I'm like,
it's
I can hear it because it's, and you only hear it because it's not fully powered. Like when it's fully powered, it makes no noise.
Right.
But because it's trying to be like dimmed down to like what it doesn't want to be,
Yeah.
it seems off and you hear something, which I feel like is what happens to people too.
Yes.
Like if you're not at their fullest capacity, they're like something is off, like you can feel it. But when
Totally.
they're fine, people don't point it out because you're like, oh, I don't notice anything different.
Right.
So it was just a thought.
Interesting. Yeah, you're so right. Are either of you musicians by any chance?
I was a DJ and that's as close to music.
Yeah, we'll
I've
take
got.
it.
Yeah. I played other people's music.
Okay, that's cool. That's what I do
Yeah.
at recess and in my yoga classes
Yes.
too. But I love music. But touching on what you were saying, Chris, the clash, that's like in musical terms, we call that dissonance. So like if you have a piano in front of you and you play 2 keys that are right next to each other, it's like you know,
It sounds very weird.
does not sound right. Like there's something off. It kind of like makes you like, oh,
Yeah.
tilt your head.
Yeah.
We don't like that. But then if you play 2 notes that are in harmony, it sounds lovely.
Yes.
And it feels good on our ears. And I feel like what you're saying about people is absolutely true because each of us is different. We're all unique. Nobody on this earth is the same, but there is total harmony between certain people, and sometimes there's dissonance between others. And whereas maybe one of your clients, Tyler, might not like working with me because I'm like talking about how do you want to feel when you're 80 years old in retirement, and let's plan for that feeling. They're like, no, I want to make sure that I have $5 million in the bank and X, Y, and Z and
Right.
this many, and and you would be the person for them because that's harmonious to them. Maybe for them that would create dissonance if I was presenting them with a plan that's all about feelings.
Yeah, no, and the same, the opposite version of that
Right.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like we've both said, there's both people out there. So you need
Yes.
the person to kind of make that connection.
Yeah, definitely.
And definitely the thing that makes us different, and we've talked about this even in text and stuff and phone calls before, is we're not afraid to talk to each other and work in harmony together as well too. Be like, hey, maybe you have an idea that I didn't think of, or I have an idea that you didn't. And having I think the most important part is find that person that meshes with you the best, but knowing that that person is willing to be open to ask others for other opinions as well.
Yes. Teamwork.
Yep, exactly.
Right? Like, oh my gosh, my sister-in-law, she's so amazing. I love her. Total harmony there.
Yeah.
But she always says to her kids, my niece and nephews, she's like, teamwork. And they follow and all respond together. They're like, makes the dream work. Like all together. It's so cute. But it's true. And I think I was listening to your conversation with Catherine Yearwood.
Oh, yeah.
And she mentioned collaboration over competition. I think it was her. I listen to a lot of your podcasts, but I just think that is the answer. And then it kind of pulls in the yoga philosophy too, connection, connectedness. If we honor that connectedness, we honor that connection, we find harmony where it is to be found, then we can always collaborate. I mean, even like my dad is a football coach. My brothers played football in college. I played sports growing up. And so obviously I was in a competitive environment like plenty of times during my life. And I always found it really interesting going to watch my brother's football games in particular, because when they're playing against the other team, I should know a lot more about football than I actually do. But when they're playing against the other team and let's say the other team's quarterback throws an amazing pass, the receiver catches it and scores a touchdown, there's like this part of me that wants to cheer, like, yeah, they did it. That was awesome. And I think, like, fans around me would be like, no, like, boo, like shouting and so angry and mad and stuff. And I get it, because it's a game and it is a competition. You want to figure out who's going to win the game at the end of the day. But I always wonder what it would be like if teams, coaches, athletes took a different perspective from time to time. And probably there are several out there who do. But instead of like thinking of the other team or your competitor as the enemy, what if you thought about them as like this really strong, awesome athlete who you might want to be a little more like? Or like, oh, if they can run and score a touchdown, that's inspiring. I want to do that too.
Yeah, I think the best athletes do that.
Yeah.
I've been an athlete almost my whole life growing up, very competitive, almost to the opposite extent, right? But like I've always noticed too, because I played football, I wrestled, MMA stuff, and especially like the UFC is something that most our listeners could at least understand and know about. And that's when I can really kind of relate to, because a lot of the really good fighters, even after like they go and they literally beat the crap out of each other, right? And then at the end of the day, they go and they give each other a hug. And so at the end of them, even the people that hate each other, like usually at the end of it, having 25 minutes in a cage together, like you have to respect the other person standing in there.
Of course, yeah.
And then of course the best of the best are like, dang, how did he hit me with that hook?
And then you want to learn from it.
Yeah,
right?
and you're like, how did this happen? And then even I remember there was one time in football, there was a team playing against us that had this incredible play, and we're like, that was impressive.
Yep.
And
Love
then
that.
our coach
Okay,
was like,
okay,
okay,
good.
how do we, one, how do we defend against this next
Yeah.
time?
Yes.
And two, how can we try to replicate that with the players that we have? Because their players have their own strengths and weaknesses and stuff. How
Yeah.
can we try to imitate that the best that we can with the strengths that we have so we can do it the next time? So I think
so that
kind of
is a
growth,
mentality
yeah.
that exists.
Yeah, and
Good.
it's that growth. It's that growth mentality too.
Yes.
It's just you want to keep on
Yep.
doing better, and that's the same thing with if you're just competing against someone, you're trying to knock them down. How much higher can you get
Yeah.
from someone that you're knocking down, right? But if you're both trying to not compete, but like collaborate with each other,
Yeah.
you're pushing each other higher and higher
Right,
and higher.
right. And you're continuing to grow and become better versions of yourselves, like TJ said.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why you got
cool.
to scrimmage. You got to play against
Right.
somebody a little bit better to make you a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You're right. And shake hands at the end of the game and say good game. Yesterday I went to the UNCW basketball game.
Oh yeah.
We won. Yeah.
I know. We've had a little rough patch there for a little bit. So.
And I love going to UNCW sporting events. I ran track there when I was in
Oh, no way.
college.
Nice.
So as Towson was leaving, there were some little kids in the crowd and they're like, boo, boo. Stop that. They just tried really
That's
hard.
right.
It's like you can boo, but realize they are still better than you.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
They're a lot bigger than you. And you can learn something from them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw something like on a tangent of didn't realize how like there's somebody who was being sassy online and they're like, you realize that this professional basketball player is a lot closer to LeBron James than they are to you. And then it was because there's a guy, I follow him on TikTok, but he used to play like and one basketball. The professor, he's like a skinny, like weird looking white guy, super funny. But like people see him and they're like, oh, he just does like trick plays. And he's like, well, no, I played in college and then moved forward and I'm a lot better than you guys think I really am.
Right.
Like, I'm a good ball player. So I just always think it's kind of funny. But
Yeah.
my final question for you
Okay.
is, what does success look like for you?
Success looks like, it feels like rather for me. I go more by feels. Success feels like balance.
Okay.
Like I said, I have so many different passions and pursuits in this life.
For sure.
And I think we all do. And I think remembering that we don't have to be pigeonholed or labeled as one thing or another, and instead taking all of the different elements that comprise us and creating harmony, not dissonance, within ourselves and within our interactions, and just feeling really balanced about it all. Like you don't have to force anything, but instead there should be an element of ease through our ambition.
Nice.
Yeah. So just balance, getting enough sleep, getting enough movement, exercise.
For sure.
Finding enough time to laugh each day and just honoring the divinity within us and within others.
So now that we're looking forward, just to take a glance back real quick, if you were to tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Okay. When I was a teenager, someone close to me said to me, yeah, you may be a jack of all trades, but you're a master of none.
Mm-hmm.
And it crushed me. I was like, what? Oh, what does that mean? Okay, I guess I have to focus on one thing. And I tried that a few different times. Like, okay, I'm going to be a school teacher. That's all I'm going to do. Nope, didn't work. I worked a million side jobs and was like, all over the place. So looking back at my younger self who received those words, I would say to her, that's not true. And I've since read the full quote. Do you guys know it?
I was just
Yes.
pulling it up. Yeah,
Yes.
because I was like, I'm glad you talked on that. I was trying to remember what it was. But yeah.
Jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I finally heard that when I was like 30.
Yeah.
Like, what? If 14-year-old Samantha Ray could hear that, man.
It makes you feel so much better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes me feel so much better. It's true. And it's okay. It's okay to have multiple passions. It's okay to have multiple endeavors. Each of you do. Look what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
You
Like
do so many different things.
so many different things. And that's awesome. And we should, because we only get this one human life to live.
Yeah.
Why would we put ourselves in a box and sit there and only do one thing? Unless that's what you like to do.
Yeah.
Do that.
Right.
Just honor yourself. But yeah, to my younger self, I would say, it's okay, Samantha. You can
There's
do
more to
multiple.
that quote.
Yeah, there's more to that quote. That's
Yeah.
what I would say. There is more to that quote.
Yeah. It was funny too, because I just recently learned that as like a couple years ago. And I was like, I have been lied to my whole
Yes.
entire life. Like that was not the 14th century quote that they said.
Right?
And then why did you stop at that comma? It's not even the end of the sentence. It's a comma.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a comma.
It's the same as like blood is thicker than water. Like
Right.
everyone says it. I'm like, but you realize like that quote is
I was
a
like,
full
you
like
stop.
2 sentence longer.
Do you know the rest of it? I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't know there was more to that one.
Yeah.
Oh, I think technically it's like blood of the covenant is thicker than water of the womb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
AKA
Gotcha.
like you making friends, like the family you build is better for you than just like
Wow.
to your family that you're born into.
So it
Because,
actually means the opposite of what people use it to mean.
Yeah. For the
you know,
most part,
like
yeah.
you grow up in a family and they're all addicts, like you don't need to support them in being an addict. You want to make them better. You should
Right.
grow yourself with the family that you bring into your life that are all like building you up, trying to raise you out of that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's like being successful out of force rather than out of support. Success comes from support, not
Yes.
from force.
Yes. And
Yeah.
don't quote me on that because I don't have it in front
Yeah,
of me.
yeah, yeah.
It's pretty much that line though. You got the majority of it. But now that we've probably just flipped everyone's world upside down with every quote that you heard for your whole entire life is wrong,
Right.
and in the better way for you, how can people find you so they can find your services?
Oh, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
You can visit my website, mariciwellness.com. That's MARICI wellness.com. Or follow me on Instagram. Actually, that's probably the quickest and easiest way to get a hold of me. Samantha.Ray, R-A-Y, like a ray of sunshine, or that's what the underline is called, right?
Right,
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
Nice.
Easy enough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll have your stuff in the show notes, so check it out. But yeah, just so you guys know, we are all over the place now. We're on YouTube, Spotify, obviously on Instagram and Apple Music. So yeah, check us out, subscribe, help us grow our community, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Yeah. If you want to support us in other ways, go to that little link below and get one of the Flaviar subscriptions, or check out Leland Brewing Company, who's our sponsor.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Cheers.